I am Paul Swift, a student studying biomedical engineering at Purdue University of West Lafayette. I came to this specific university expecting to receive a prestigious and nationally renowned academic program, readying me to become the greatest engineer that I could be. Upon being here for only 1 month, I can already see that well-known prestige. However, I have also come to realize Purdue's greatest underlying social problem: housing. I live in arguably one of the most luxurious dorms called Winifred Parker Residence Hall. Although this lavish dorm is quite enticing, I have 5 roommates laid out in these 2 rooms. Yes, 6 guys in one singular dorm. Now, my roommates and I are nowhere near the only people who have experienced dorm cramping, as it has been deemed. According to the 2022 article, Housing Crisis Not New at Purdue, by a local newspaper, The Exponent, student housing shortages have been reported at Purdue for over 100 years. Purdue President Winthrop E. Stone, president from 1900 to 1921, made statements promising housing to all students despite the shortage. That promise was never truly fulfilled. Dorm cramping is currently the greatest symptom at Purdue, yet there are numerous others that Jude, Roman, Gabriella, and the vast majority of current Purdue students have also experienced while we have lived on campus. In a 2018 article in the magazine Study Breaks, Purdue University is being investigated over temporary housing. Written by college students for college students, a student mentioned how Purdue students unable to attain traditional dorms due to the zero vacancy issue are being relocated to temporary housing created from closets, basements, or any unused auxiliary rooms. These temporary assignments were notoriously associated with cockroaches running around and little to no privacy between barrack-like beds, much like in the left picture on this slide. Not only are there cockroaches in temporary housing, but existing housing, such as the notorious Shreve Hall, as seen in the right picture. Purdue seems to lack the initiative to better their dorming situations, whether that be in terms of quality or number of rooms. Now that I have introduced you to the greatest issue at Purdue today, us 4 Purdue students currently living on Purdue's campus and experience the crisis firsthand aim to explain what financial and social issues have resulted in such a drastic crisis at Purdue, how such a crisis affects West Lafayette in addition to Purdue, how the crisis is being combated by Purdue, and how we believe it could better be corrected. Jude will introduce you to how the crisis erupted, Roman will explain how West Lafayette is also affected, and Gabriella will wrap us up with how the crisis is being corrected and how we feel it should be corrected. Now, Jude, begin us off with how this all arose.
Thank you, Paul. Now, as Paul said, I will be addressing some of the root causes of the housing crisis at Purdue University. One of the reasons there is such a big problem with the housing at Purdue is due to the student population. Purdue is a huge university with lots of different students, many who depend on the on-campus housing that Purdue provides. The number of students that Purdue is accepting is increasing each year, which is also making the housing problem worse with every year. According to Ashley Carter, a writer for Now This News, Purdue accepted 10,000 freshmen for the 2021 to 2022 school year, which was the largest incoming class in 40 years. And to accommodate such a large class, the college had to cram 3 or 4 students in dorm rooms made for only 2. As you heard from Paul as well, Purdue is cramming students into dorms because there are simply too many students on campus, which the current infrastructure cannot handle. However, Purdue cannot just get rid of students on campus due to the funds they receive from tuition. This then leads us to our next issue, which is Purdue's dedication to keeping their tuition frozen. From this graph, you can see that for over 10 years, Purdue has frozen the price of tuition while other universities increase the price of tuition every year. Purdue's strong commitment to keeping frozen tuition as long as possible is because how it helps families be able to afford to send their kids to Purdue, and the predictable price of tuition informs families of what they need to pay in the future to send their kids to Purdue. However, Purdue's frozen tuition has negative effects associated with it. Because of the frozen tuition, Purdue becomes a very appealing university for many wishing to avoid student debt, which causes more people to apply and thus be accepted to Purdue, which increases the student population, which I have already discussed as being an issue. In addition, because Purdue's tuition is so low as compared to other universities, Purdue must accept more students overall to receive sufficient amounts of funds to run the university, again contributing to the problem of student population. According to Seth Nelson, a staff reporter for the Exponent, Purdue's trustees unanimously approved to continue the tuition freeze until spring 2026. From this, we can see that Purdue is not planning on getting rid of their frozen tuition within the next few years, and so the problems with on-campus housing are just going to get worse. The image shown here is the Frida Parker Residence Hall, which was the last on-campus residence hall to be built, which was in 2020. Since the construction of Frida Parker, there has been no projects being worked on to increase the number of dorms at Purdue. According to Marco Rivero, the head news editor of The Exponent, universities are reluctant to build dormitories because of the investment and maintenance required for them. And Purdue has preferred getting other investors and dorms to build them instead. Because of the lack of incentive by Purdue to build new housing, the housing situation is just going to keep getting worse, with more kids being forced to be into crammed rooms. Purdue is also not very transparent with their incentives to solve the housing crisis. Purdue has decided that their best way in fixing the problem of the housing crisis is just to ignore it in hopes that it will go away by itself. As you can see from the image above, students living at Purdue are not going to continue to be living in shocking spaces unless someone is actually going to resolve the housing crisis, rather than just pushing the problem under a rug. Roman will now discuss the greater impacts that the housing crisis has on West Lafayette community, which impacts more than just living students on campus at Purdue.
Thank you, Jude. I will now introduce the idea that while the current housing crisis has had a remarkable impact on the Purdue student body, it has also had a noticeable impact on the area of West Lafayette as a whole. West Lafayette Mayor John Dennis, among other members of the West Lafayette government, voiced their concerns over the issue during the 2023 State of the City address. According to the Journal and Courier, a local West Lafayette newspaper, West Lafayette City Councilman James Blanco issued a resolution for a shared understanding concerning housing between Purdue University and the city of West Lafayette. This demonstrates the catastrophic effects not only affecting Purdue University, but also the greater West Lafayette economy as a whole. Lack of housing means lack of living arrangements for workers, leading to less workers and a weaker economy. The cost of living when it comes to housing in West Lafayette has seen an extreme increase in recent history. According to Realtor.com, an online site specializing in the realty and housing trends of the United States, the average cost of a house in West Lafayette is nearly $400,000 and has increased by over 20% year over year. Not only is this over 5 times the annual salary of the average United States worker, based on a statistic from Indeed.com putting the national average at about $55,000 a year, but it is also over $100,000 higher than the state average of $231,660 for a house, according to Zillow.com. This represents years of continued inflation of housing, something that makes it nearly impossible for average working Americans to be able to afford a home in the West Lafayette area. Now that I've explained the effect on West Lafayette, Gabriella will give our proposed solution.
Thank you, Roman. As Jude discussed in a previous slide, Purdue was over-accepting students instead of unfreezing the tuition. According to the Lafayette Journal and Courier, Purdue overshot how much housing was available, and due to that, there was a lack of housing. In order to help solve this problem, Purdue needs to either build more housing or reduce the amount of students that are accepted. If Purdue were to unfreeze tuition, it would give the institution more money to be able to build more housing options. And if Purdue were to reduce the amount of students accepted, there will be more space for undergraduate students to have housing. An example of current policies meant to combat this crisis would be the construction of new dorms. According to the Purdue Newsroom, on April 14th, 2023, the Purdue University trustees agreed to build a new development. This will support the housing of 1,000 students. The construction of this new building is supposed to begin during the fall semester of 2025. This development will allow for more students to not be dorm cramped and also allow for more students to have an option for on-campus housing. Lastly, according to the Acadiana Advocate, which is the daily newspaper in Lafayette, there are a couple developers who are going to add around 468 apartments for low-income residents in Lafayette during the next couple of years. There are currently 5 apartment complexes that are in a pre-development stage. These new developments will allow off-campus housing, and this will allow for more space in the dorm rooms, which will help undergrads have more housing options. Ultimately, there has been a housing shortage since the early 20th century. The housing shortage has caused many repercussions, such as a lack of amenities, dorm cramping, and cockroach issues. In order for Purdue to manage these problems, both Purdue and West Lafayette need to build more developments that will provide housing to undergraduate students. Although there are a few examples currently in effect, our proposal to reduce the housing shortage is having Purdue get rid of frozen tuition and slightly reduce the amount of admitted students each year. Removing the frozen tuition will enable Purdue to increase tuition, allowing for more revenue that can increase the quality of housing solutions at Purdue. The second part, reducing admitted students, will directly allow for more housing space for undergraduate students. Now that we have explained the financial and social issues that resulted in such a drastic crisis at Purdue, how the crisis has affected the greater Lafayette area, how the crisis is being combated by Purdue, and how we believe it could be better corrected, hopefully Purdue will finally help create better undergraduate housing campus options.